Welcome to MacStories Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. Today's show is brought to you by Details Pro. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Viticci. Happy Friday, Federico.
Hello, I'm back.
You are back. Good to have you.
Here I am. I'm done with everything.
The Italian fella is back. It's good to have you, Federico. I'm glad you're here with us. And I'm glad that this is your triumphant return to MacStories Unwind, because most of the stories this week were really written by you or were related in some way to another review that you wrote. So I think why don't we let you kick things off, because you had the two biggest stories on the site this week.
Yeah. So the first and the big one is the iOS and iPadOS 15 review. So this is my 7th annual review, which I consider the 7th annual review. There was the iOS 8 one that's a bit contentious in my circle of friends, in the lore.
the lore of MacStories.
Yeah, but I labeled them as official annual reviews, starting with iOS 9 in 2015. So this is my 7th one. Now, a few words about this review. I mean, it's impossible to sum it up on Unwind, right? So I kind of felt like maybe we could talk about the meta aspect of the review, which is for this year. So if you've seen my iOS reviews before and you thought, oh, wow, this is too long, this is too technical, this is over my head, I don't want to read this. First of all, I understand. And the second thing is, I hear you, and that's something that has also bothered me as well. You know, when I started doing these reviews, first of all, I felt a little, you know, I felt like I had big shoes to fill. I mean, obviously, when I started out 6 years ago, I felt like, and maybe this sounds silly, but my goal was to be, you know, I want to be like John Syracuse for iOS, you know?
Right.
A lot of people wanted to do that. And so obviously I felt that I needed to maybe overcompensate a little. What's the expression in English, John? Like doing something out of your league, but that's like shooting above something.
Hitting above your weight.
Yes, thank you. Hitting above your weight. Yes. And I felt a little like that years ago. And so I think the reason why a lot of my previous reviews were so deeply technically focused on APIs and developer frameworks was a combination of two things. One, hitting above my weight, as you said. And the second is, I love technical stuff myself. I love
yes, you do. I know you do.
About these details. And so it was easy for me to do those reviews. But over the years, I've refined my process. And I've seen how, at the end of the day, that kind of deeply technical writing is enjoyable for me. It's maybe enjoyable for a few people out there who are like me, but it doesn't make for a good story. It doesn't make for a good story that you want to just relax and sit down and read about what's new and read my opinion about things. So for the past few years, I've been refining sort of myself, if you will, my writing style, and trying to do better. And this year, I think I've hit on a pretty sweet spot in terms of making the review shorter, but still packed with details and opinion, having the technical information that, however, is not the main protagonist of this story. And the way that I've been doing about this is the technical details are the background that inform my writing. They're not the core sections of the review. So this is what you can expect, right? Whether you read in Safari or you become a Club MacStories member and get the ebook, which is available to all Club MacStories members. That's the kind of review that you will see. It's shorter. I don't know what the percentage is. I guess we'll be doing this calculation for MacStories Weekly. I can tell you last year it was 61,000 words, and this year is 48,000 words. So it's a bit shorter, and it's got a different style. I think it's more approachable. At least that's my hope. I think it's more conversational. There's more graphics, more screenshots. It's more visual. And it's not the kind of review where you feel like you're reading a developer essay. It's more of like the review of someone who is somewhat knowledgeable about iOS and tells you about it. So that's sort of what you can expect from this one. And I mean, I feel kind of weird talking about it myself. So John, you read the thing. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
No, I think you really hit the nail on the head to give you yet another American expression or English expression, whatever it happens to be. But yeah, I think you did a great job in that sense because it is, you can tell that it's informed by the technical aspects, but it doesn't dive into APIs and methods and all that kind of stuff, all the developer stuff, which I know some people are really into that, but that's really not the core MacStories audience. So I think you did a good job of really hitting on the themes and making it conversational and also making it a good read in terms of an overall arc about what is this release all about. And that's, I think, important for people to kind of understand in terms of the context. Of course, we also did this week, we did a bunch of perks for Club MacStories members, and we had perks for all members. We had perks for the Club Plus members. We had all kinds of things, including 3 ebooks, as well as you did a couple of advanced shortcuts. You did a making of in MacStories Weekly, the club newsletter, and there were both Obsidian plugins that my son Finn developed with you, and a Safari extension that he wrote that's for highlighting web pages and saving markdown quotes and reference links for that stuff. So it was a long list of things, and there's a story on the site all about what those things are and where you can go find them.
Yeah, so this was fun. This was fun to do. It's always a long project, and I just feel very happy that it's out there, and I'm done, and I can think about it again next year, because I know that I will keep doing this, but I think I've finally found my style. It only took me 6 years to get to this point.
Yeah, and though it's a big project, and I know it's always hard, it's probably a little bit more comfortable place to be than some of the ways you did it in the past, which I think was making your life more difficult than it needed to be, I think. So, although this year, I guess it was Apple that made your life more difficult than it needed to be, because you got an iPad mini right on the heels of, actually, while you were finalizing the iOS and iPadOS reviews. So that was your second big story this week.
My other big story was the iPad mini review. As I was finalizing the review, I received an iPad mini, and I had to figure out how to use it, how to test it, how to write about it. So we're going to talk about the iPad mini in the next episode of App Stories, out on Sunday for App Stories Plus subscribers, and on Monday for regular listeners. Also, I wanted to mention in tomorrow's issue of MacStories Weekly, because we are going to release MacStories Weekly one day later than usual, because we just need a little extra time. We've been so busy and we don't want to rush out an issue of Weekly. I will be sharing the behind the scenes, the making of the iOS review, and all the tools, the plugins, the shortcuts that I used in Obsidian, and my approach to the iOS review, how I organized this huge writing project, and all the different techniques that I used. But yeah, the iPad mini, go read the review and stay tuned for the next episode of App Stories, I guess. But long story short, it's an amazing iPad as a portable iPad that can be your non-primary tablet. It's excellent for reading, for watching videos, for playing games without a game controller. This is actually like my favorite iPad for playing games with touch controls, especially in landscape mode. It's just so nice to use. And that about sums it up. It's a nice iPad to use. You can hold it one-handed. You can read for hours, and it doesn't, cause any wrist pain, or, it doesn't, at least I hope that most people, it won't cause any RSI issues. It's so lightweight. You can grab it with one hand if your hand is large enough, I suppose. But it's just so delightful to use. It lets you do things that you just cannot do with the big iPad Pro. I mean, I guess you can hold a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, but not like an iPad mini. And go check out the beautiful photos in the review, all done by Sylvia. And I think she really stepped up her game here, because I really love those colorful photos with the multiple iPads and the iPhone. And she did an amazing job.
Yeah, those are fantastic photos. And speaking of photos, Federico, we got the initial iPhone reviews this week, and there are a lot of good ones out there. I mean, I haven't read or watched all of them. I like The Verge's in particular. Their video review was quite good. But I linked this week a couple of different stories that, to me, really hit on one of the key aspects of the new iPhones, and in particular the iPhone 13 Pro, which is the cameras. And there were two different stories that I linked. One was by Austin Mann, who went to Tanzania and photographed wildlife and the people and the landscapes using the new camera. And boy, it's really amazing what that camera can do in the hands of a professional photographer. I always enjoy Austin's annual reviews, and he's always in some kind of really interesting, unique location. And this year, being in Africa, just that much nicer. And it's really interesting to see kind of the macro photography as well as some of the wide shots that he had in that story. So check that out. And then the second one was a review that Matthew Panzarino did for TechCrunch. And he's been doing reviews of iPhone cameras for quite a while now by going to Disneyland out in California. And he went there with his family, and he focused on cinematic mode, which is the new video mode that's a lot like portrait mode that we've had now for a few years for photographs, but it's applied to taking video. And there's been a lot written about this in the past week. It's not perfect. It's very much a 1.0 type of feature, I think. But if you watch the video that he produced for this, I really like it. I mean, I think it's easy to get up really close to your screen and squint at it and see where the mistakes are, where the software doesn't quite cut it. But if you're sitting on your couch and watching this on your TV or something because someone in your family sent you a vacation photo, a video or something, it really looks nice and it really adds something to the experience. So I'm looking forward to Apple doing better with it in the future, but I'm looking forward to trying it too myself and actually seeing how it works, because I got some trips coming up soon, and I think I'll take some video for that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I look forward to the cinematic mode John Voorhees review.
Yes, very much.
It's gonna be fun.
All right, Federico, you already talked a little bit about the club, so I don't know if there's much more to say about that. We've got your making of, we'll have a lot of apps. We'll also have the usual links and all sorts of other things.
And my shortcuts, my two shortcuts from the iOS 15 review. These are for all Club MacStories members. So all club members will be able to read my making of, and you will get access to Safari Speaker Pro, which is an advanced shortcut that lets you turn articles from Safari into spoken audio files that you can embed in Obsidian, share with apps, save to files, as well as Shortcut Exporter Pro, which is a pro version of Shortcut Exporter, which I shared in my iOS 15 review. This lets you automate backups of multiple shortcuts. You can do batch backups of all your shortcuts that were last modified within a specific time frame, or even all shortcuts from a specific folder, or shortcuts that contain a specific keyword in their title. So if you want to back up all your shortcuts that are called Twitter something, you can do that. And these are available for all club members. For Plus and Premier members, we also shared the 3 plugins for Obsidian that your son Finn made for me this summer. They are called Todoist Tasks, Markdown Insert, and Export Markdown with Embeds. We wrote about these plugins in detail on the club website. We can put the links in the show notes. Everybody can read those tutorials and explanations. And Plus and Premier members can now download and use those plugins. So if you want to use the same tools that I used to make the iOS and iPadOS 15 review happen, you can do that. And if you're not a Plus or Premier member, just go to plus.club and either sign up or upgrade your existing account. They are really good plugins, I can tell you that.
They really are, and one of them's already been updated on the site with some suggestions from club members. So, they're continuing to be developed.
Yeah.
All right. This week too, Federico, we, of course, on App Stories on Monday, talked all about your review of iOS and iPadOS 15. So that is a deep dive into all aspects of the review, so everybody can check that out. And Federico, I want to tell you about our sponsor for this particular episode, and that is Details Pro, an accessible graphical tool for the iPhone, iPad, and Mac that brings your app designs to life with Swift UI. The future of modern app design on Apple's platforms is Swift UI. And with Details Pro, you can be up and running immediately, designing UIs without typing a single line of code. Details Pro uses a drag and drop interface to make designing app interfaces, widgets, and screens a completely graphical, natural experience. There's no multi-gigabyte download or having to deal with any of the complexities of Xcode. Instead, Details Pro focuses on your design first. There's also a terrific Details Pro community that offers all kinds of downloadable templates to help you learn, remix, and use as starting points for your own projects. When you're happy with the design that you've got, you can then export it and run it right inside of Swift Playgrounds or in Xcode itself. Built in Swift UI itself by a former Apple design prototyper, Details Pro is trusted by all sorts of industry leaders like Apple itself, Starbucks, Microsoft, Nike, and Porsche. And it's really easy to see why, because it's so simple to use. If you've been looking for a way to get into design with Swift UI, your search is over. You can download Details Pro today for free and use it with 5 files, but you can unlock unlimited files and upcoming features like versioning, reusable components, MapKit maps, and a whole lot more for just $10 a year or a one-time payment of $29.99. Just go to detailspro.app to learn more and download this terrific app. I'll put a link in the show notes too. Our thanks to Details Pro for their support of MacStories and this episode of Unwind. All right, Federico, there are no arcade updates to talk about this week, so I thought we would jump right into our Unwind picks. And I know you haven't been doing a lot other than writing reviews, but...
No, I'm just I'm starting to unwind myself now. So
good.
I can give you a good restaurant in Viterbo if you want, but that seems oddly specific.
Very.
So why don't you just give me something?
All right. Well, maybe you and I will eat at that restaurant in Viterbo sometime and someday. But I have a pick for you too, which is Decoder, which is a podcast. It's called Decoder with Nilay Patel, and it's one of The Verge's podcasts, and it's really good. I don't listen to every single episode, but I've really been impressed with the number of guests that have been on here. It's always an interview type of format. And the most recent episode was one of the ones that I found really fascinating. Maybe it's Nilay's background as a lawyer like me that really has attracted me to this particular one. But it was all about Olivia Rodrigo's latest album, Sour, and how there's been a lot of rights disputes revolving around it, because there are a couple of songs that are very similar to some other songs, like a song by Paramore and some Taylor Swift similarities and other things. And it was a discussion about how songwriting credits are done in the music industry and how streaming has changed the way that works compared to radio. And it was really fascinating because depending on how the music is played and distributed has a big impact on who's making the money and where the money is coming from. And some recent court decisions have really upped the ante and created a lot of litigation over songwriting credits in particular, which is where the action has been, I suppose, with Sour. So that was a fascinating episode of the show. But Nilay's also had a great episode with a reporter from The Verge about how Slack is changing the culture of companies like Apple, for instance, and some of the issues it's had with employees recently. There was even an interview with Chuck Todd, who is the host of a Sunday morning politics show on US TV called Meet the Press. And you might think that that's kind of dry, but it was actually fascinating to see a show that has been on TV in the US since, I want to say, the 50s or the 60s, and see how they're evolving that format from television to make it relevant in today's world of podcasts and YouTube and all those kind of things. So it's a lot of very interesting people who are big names in their industries talking about the current state of technology and how it's impacting media and other things. And I've really enjoyed it. Like I said, I don't listen to every single episode, but I listen to most of them, and it's a fantastic show worth checking out.
Very nice. Okay.
All right, Federico, that's it for this week on Unwind. We'll be back again next week, and I'm hoping Federico will play some games this weekend or do something that he can recommend by next week. But I want to thank our sponsor again for this episode, and that is Details Pro. You can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net. He's at Fetici on Twitter and Instagram. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.